What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to this video called Why the World Thinks Americans Are Brainwashed. So, obviously, that's pretty disturbing, alarming to hear, and it definitely makes me question some things. But, brainwashed can mean a lot of different things. So, I mean, to be honest, I do think a lot of Americans really think that the US is the greatest place in the world, and there's nothing you could say to change their mind. But, I got to admit, that's something that we are definitely told a lot. As children growing up here, they literally teach you, like, this is the greatest place ever, and we are the best. And so, I don't know. It's kind of weird thinking about that kind of stuff. So today, I thought it'd be very interesting to check this video out. This is by Holy Kool-Aid, and it's called Why the World Thinks Americans Are Brainwashed. So let's take a look.
As someone who has lived in over a dozen countries and traveled to more than 35 of them, I've started noticing some extremely troubling forms of propaganda that Americans are taught from childhood. Things that people in free developed democratic countries overseas find absolutely bizarre. And
See, this is like kind of troubling to me, but at the same time, I'm very very curious, like to see what people think. Like from an outsider point of view, like here in the U.S., I understand we are in our own little bubble, our own culture, our own way of thinking, and it's actually I think valuable to hear like what people think about us, people who are outside of the U.S. That's something that we don't get exposed to very much. So, yeah, I'm a bit nervous about this, but I think it's good. I hope.
things that most Americans never question, because we've been marinating in it since birth. And look, every country has its own brand of propaganda. I'm not trying to pretend that America is
Hmm.
uniquely evil here, but what makes American propaganda so effective is that most of us don't even realize it exists.
That's scary. I mean, but that's how propaganda and brainwashing works. They make it seem like it was your idea, or you don't even realize you're getting influenced by certain ideas or philosophies, or like he said, this isn't unique to the United States, I would think. Everybody is influenced by the ideas and the culture that you are born into and where grow up and learn and are raised. I think everyone is susceptible to that, but I don't know. He just makes it sound like the U.S. that we uniquely like are brainwashed or have like these crazy things that we don't realize about ourselves. So yeah, let's see.
We think that propaganda is something that happens in North Korea or Soviet bases, posters of dictators, and state controlled media. We don't recognize it when it's sung at football games and printed on a bumper sticker. So here are 7 forms of propaganda that you probably didn't even realize that you grew up with.
That's true, actually. For a lot of Americans, like, we're aware of propaganda. We're aware of, like, fake news and, brainwashing. But we just think, oh, that's, that's them. Couldn't be us. No, no, couldn't be us. No, not, what? We just think we're above that. But it's like, how would you know? Because that's how brainwashing and propaganda works. You don't realize it. So how would we know unless we're told? So it's scary. But again, I think good to acknowledge.
if you're an American.
Holy Kool-Aid.
Number 1, US-centric education. American history is extraordinarily short. We are talking a few centuries compared to civilizations that span millennia. And yet, if you grew up in an American public school, you would think that the United States was the center of human history.
That's true. Like, because I've done a couple of videos now here on YouTube, like learning about some of the European history. There's so much history that we were never taught that I never realized. This is totally correct. Like looking back, when you're a kid, you don't realize it, but especially in the United States, that's why so many of us end up growing into adults and thinking like the US is the only place in the world and like we're the only country that exists or matters. That's why a lot of Americans think that because of our education, we're literally not taught so much of history.
Geography classes often aren't taught at all, and world history courses, when they are taught, are basically how does the rest of the planet relate to America? The Vietnam
Yeah.
War is taught as a war for freedom. Westward expansion is framed as brave pioneers taming a wild frontier, not as the systematic displacement and genocide of indigenous peoples who've been living there for thousands of years.
Sure, it's what you teach, it's how you teach it, what they choose not to teach. To be honest, I thought in the US we just had like a really really bad education as far as history and world geography. I just thought we did a bad job. Now I'm thinking, is that on purpose? Is there a motive? Are they purposefully not teaching us things about the rest of the world, about history, as a way of controlling the way we think about things? Now I just thought it was they're lazy, like teachers and the US education. Now I'm wondering, is it all on purpose?
World War II, Americans swoop in and save the day, with little mention of the roughly 27 million Soviets who died on the Eastern Front doing the bulk of the fighting against Hitler. Now,
Absolutely. The way that we paint ourselves as like the heroes of every situation. Um, oh my God, this is so true.
Now, compare that to how other countries teach history. In much of Europe, kids actually learn global history. They study African kingdoms, Asian dynasties, Middle Eastern contributions to science and mathematics. They learn about colonialism for what it
Wow.
actually is, not heroic adventure, but exploitation. When I talk to Americans who are traveling abroad for the first time, I'm often shocked at how little they know about the rest of the world.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, wow. And this is just the first point about American brainwashing. Oh my God. Because already this is making like a pretty good case. What else is there?
That's not by accident. A nation which doesn't teach its citizens about the world produces citizens who don't question their own nation's role in it.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that. I just thought we had like a bad education. Now I'm thinking like is that a way of controlling how we think? Wow.
Number 2, the Cold War binary. If you grew up in America anytime after 1950, you absorbed one of the most effective propaganda frameworks ever constructed. Communism equals evil, capitalism equals freedom. Full stop. No nuance, no discussion, just a clean binary where one side wears white hats and the other side is a cartoon villain. What they
Yeah.
don't teach you is that during the Cold War, the United States overthrew democratically elected governments around the world simply because the governments leaned left. In 1953, the CIA helped orchestrate a coup against Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh because he nationalized Iran's oil industry. In 1954, the US toppled Guatemala's president Arbenz because his land reforms threatened the profits of United Fruit Company.
Yeah, this is definitely not how they teach it in the United States. A lot of this stuff, especially the Cold War, they did. I barely remember learning much of anything about that. Probably, I just thought, again, they did a bad job teaching it. No, it's because it makes us look bad, so we purposefully do not teach things that make the United States look bad. That's what I'm realizing.
In 1973, the CIA backed the overthrow of Chile's Salvador Allende, a democratically elected socialist, and replaced him with Augusto Pinochet, a brutal military dictator who tortured and murdered thousands. The Congo, Brazil, Indonesia,
What?
it's all the same playbook. America claimed to be defending democracy while systematically destroying it in order to exploit country after country. This all is
And if they do teach this stuff, they don't give all the different sides. Like, they give the American version, where we're the heroes. Because if they had taught us all this stuff, like how he is presenting it, I guarantee you it would have changed the way I think about the United States and every child in the US. It would change the way we think about our country. We might question it. We might criticize it, which, you know, don't get me wrong, a lot of us end up doing, but not till we're adults. Not till way later in life do we start questioning things for the first time. And it seems to be like by design.
is recent history, and this binary thinking is still alive and well. If you suggest universal healthcare in America, watch how quickly someone calls you a communist. Propose free
Yeah.
public university education, something that dozens of thriving democracies already provide.
Yeah, because I have wondered, after learning about some of this stuff as an adult, like universal healthcare coverage and free education, like I have wondered often now why we don't do that in the United States. It's a conversation we never had as children. We're just taught, this is the way we do it in the US, and that's the right way. And it makes absolutely no sense when you can think for yourself. So, and a lot of that is very obviously to me, I understand now because in the United States, there's a ton of money being made off of us from healthcare, insurance, and student loans, paying for education. A lot of that stuff has to do with how the US wants to take advantage of its own citizens for money, if we're talking about those specifically.
And suddenly you're a Marxist. The Cold War ended over 30 years ago, but the propaganda framework it built is still alive and kicking. Number 3, the land of the free myth. Americans are told from birth that the United States is the freest country on earth. It's in the
Yes,
songs, it's on the bumper stickers. It's baked into the nation's identity so deeply that questioning it feels almost heretical. But
absolutely. This is something we are taught nonstop as children. And like he's saying, it's in all of our national songs, the land of the free, free to how we are the most free and we are the most proud. And that's like, that is one of America's core identities right there. And what goes along with that is it doesn't just stop there. It's like we're taught we are free and the rest of the world is not free. The rest of the world doesn't understand. Which, as a child, you believe.
is it true? Well, let's look at the data. On the Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index, the US doesn't crack the top 50. It ranks 57th in the world, just below Sierra Leone. On the Cato Institute's Human Freedom Index, and keep in mind, the Cato Institute is a libertarian think tank, not some leftist outfit, multiple countries outrank America in both
Wow.
personal and economic freedom.
So, literally, according to the data, which of course they don't show you in the US, we are objectively not the most free. It's that's another thing I'm realizing. There's a lot of like statistics and data that literally show how the United States does not rank very highly for happiness or education or freedom, but they don't show you that stuff when you're a kid, when you're growing up. So, it's not just what they teach you, that can be brainwashing or propaganda. It's what they choose not to teach you. That's what I'm realizing.
The United States incarcerates more people per capita than almost every other country on the planet. More than China, more than Russia, Iran, or North Korea. The land of the free locks up more of its own citizens than almost every authoritarian regime on Earth.
And yet here they'll tell you it's for your safety. It's for your safety, and you just don't. You're told, oh, it's so I'm safe. Okay, great, and you don't think about it. But if they told you this, if they told you, do you know that the United States locks up the most people by far, more than authoritarian governments do? That would make people question it. Instead, they just say, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They're criminals, you know. Don't. It's for your safety." And people don't question it.
A disproportionate number of them are Black and Latino. This is not what freedom looks like. It is a system designed to warehouse people. But it goes deeper. A handful of corporations control vast swaths of American industry, from media to agriculture to healthcare and tech. These corporations aren't just influencing a little bit of government policy, they're writing the policy. Politicians respond to donors and lobbyists, not constituents.
This is something that I've learned about recently in my like how corrupt the US government is. And I think it's particularly poignant right now because of Donald Trump and the Trump government and the utter disaster that all it and it's really brought to light how corrupt our government is, and how, just like he said, like how much wealthy people, donors, people are allowed to donate to Donald Trump and then get favors, and then companies and corporations also get a say in our laws and our policy decisions. It's And you better believe in it when you're a little kid in school and they're teaching you about our government and teaching you about how laws are passed. None of that is brought up, of course. But that is 1000% how it works.
Hell, there was a Princeton study which actually found that the preferences of American voters have a near zero statistical impact on whether a policy gets passed or not. But the preferences of economic elites, big businesses, and organized interest groups are strongly correlated with what policies actually get passed into law.
We should be way more upset. Like, American citizens should be way more mad at our own government. We should. That's how you know we're brainwashed. Because we should be way more upset about all this, but we're not. Because so many Americans don't know about it or don't care. Because we've also been taught not to question it or not to care.
In other words, your politicians don't care what you want, unless you're a billionaire. Elections are largely bought and paid for. Gerrymandering carves up districts so that the politicians can choose their voters rather than the other way around, like it should be in a free democracy. Voter suppression laws target communities least likely to vote for the people in power, and the two-party system has become a self-reinforcing trap that incentivizes extremism over representation.
The two-party system, another thing I've thought about recently, especially when you learn that in other parts of the world, like a lot of other countries, have way more than two political parties, way more than two choices. I never realized how strange, how bad that is. But that's another thing that's totally normal and not questioned in the US, that we have two choices, Republican or Democrat, and that's it. There's so many things like that that we don't even realize are crazy.
We are taught, and this is hardcore propaganda, that America's electoral system is the best. Well, except when our guy loses, of course. But there is a much better electoral system. It is called ranked choice voting. And the only people who prefer our current system over ranked choice are those who are financially incentivized against freedom and democracy.
I'm
Here's
sure.
how it works. With ranked choice, instead of picking just one candidate and hoping for the best, you rank out your preferences with your top choice at the top and your
Oh,
least choice at the bottom. If no one wins a majority, the candidate with the fewest votes gets eliminated, and the people who voted for them have those votes redistributed to their second choice. You
oh,
keep going
interesting.
until someone actually has majority support.
That's interesting. Is this common in other parts of the world? That's very interesting. It's also a way for people who want to vote for a minority candidate or something not very popular, they can do that, but their vote will still count if that person isn't elected. If I understand this correctly, that's very interesting. Why would we not do that? Well, for one thing, we only have two choices, so I don't know if this would even work here.
It rewards candidates who appeal broadly rather than those who energize the extremes. It reduces what's known as the spoiler effect and creates a better reflection of what voters actually want. There are already several US cities and states which have already adopted ranked choice voting.
Because literally, like during elections, sometimes there's like a third candidate, like an independent, and people don't bother voting for that person, even if they like them, because they feel like their vote is wasted. This system prevents that. So this is great.
And it's the norm in countries like Australia and Ireland. But most Americans have never even heard of it because
No,
the two parties currently in power have zero incentive to tell you about the system that would threaten their grip, and they have every incentive to criticize it.
that's scary. That's scary that there's so many amazing ideas, so many amazing things we could be doing to make America better that we don't because the people in power don't want things to change. That's how we think of like North Korea. Like, oh, yeah, they don't educate their citizens so that they don't question anything because they don't want anything to change. I'm seeing so much of that exact same playbook here in the US. We Most Americans would never think that about us. That's North Korea. That's for crazy countries. We are literally doing that.
You should run aggressively against ranked choice voting. It is a big.
Number 4, America's stupidly big military budget. The US spends more on its military than the next 10 countries combined.
Oh my
Let that sink
God.
in. More than China, Russia, the UK, Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, Japan, South Korea, and Australia put together.
So this is an interesting one because it's something we're taught to be very proud of like we're taught to be very, very, very proud of our military. And I am. Maybe because I was taught, but I do genuinely feel proud and thankful for the people who defend me and my country. That's a very brave, honorable thing to do. Like anybody around the world who's in their nation's military. It's a very honorable thing and it's important. But in the United States, we definitely put a lot of emphasis on it. And I mean, I understand we spend an insane amount of money on our military, but I think a lot of Americans are okay with that because it makes us feel safe. Like, but what we don't realize, I think, is that it's so overkill. It's so over the top. Our military budget is the next 10 countries put together. That's not necessary. We can still have an amazing military without wasting so much money and resources, but it's like we're scared to even question this cuz just like freedom, the military is like that's our identity, that's our thing. So we don't even question it. and it really needs to be questioned.
Now, Americans are taught that this spending is about protecting freedom and defending the free world. And
Yeah.
sure, a reasonable national defense is necessary. But the vast majority of this budget doesn't go to defense. It funds over 750 military bases in at least 80 countries. It funds
Wow.
interventions, regime changes, drone programs, and the maintenance of a global military empire. Meanwhile,
I think at the very least, the US military needs to be accountable for what we spend the money on. That's like in the US, I have no idea where my taxpayer money is going. Probably the military. So I would at least like to know exactly what they're using the money on. Like but that's on us. That's American citizens need to hold our government accountable. That's on us. Like, and it's it's like we're it's easy to say that you're being taken advantage of. It's easy to say, "Oh, they're lying to us. They're not telling us the everything." Well, it's like, well, you can do something like as citizens, you can the government is supposed to be scared of you. You know, the government is supposed to serve you. That's what it's there for. So, as American citizens, I feel like we have kind of failed ourselves not holding our government accountable for this.
American roads are crumbling, bridges are collapsing, the healthcare system bankrupts families, teachers buy their own classroom supplies, student debt has surpassed 1.7 trillion, and millions of Americans can't afford basic prescriptions. Other countries, meanwhile, invest their resources differently. Universal healthcare, free or affordable higher education, robust public transit, paid parental leave, affordable childcare, and as a result, their citizens are measurably healthier, better educated, less stressed, and by many metrics, happier. This
Ah, man, it does open my eye. It does make me think, if we spent some of that taxpayer money instead of the military, if we spent that on healthcare, education, infrastructure, I think Americans we would love it. It's just we don't even realize that that's important. So, I thought using the term brainwashed was a little strong, but it's like it's either we're brainwashed or we're brain dead because we don't even think about this kind of stuff, how much it could help the US to put some of that money towards other public services other than the military. And we could still have a fine military at the same time. We could have it all. What it really makes you think.
isn't speculative, it's what the data consistently shows. Historians have a term for what happens when an empire pours its resources into military expansion while its domestic foundations rot. Imperial overstretch. And it's how empires collapse. The Romans did it, the British did it, the Soviets did it, and if you
Huh?
look at the trajectory, America is running headfirst over the same cliff. Number 5. The Pledge of Allegiance. Having children stand up every single morning, place their hands over their heart, face a flag, and recite a loyalty oath in unison is, by any outside standard, one of the creepiest things about America.
It's funny because it's amazing what you can think is normal. As a kid, I never questioned this. The Pledge of Allegiance. Dude, and as an adult, I never really thought it was weird. But it's like, do when when you think about it, do other countries do this? This is why it's important to have like an outside perspective. Is that weird? In the US, in school, before school starts, we put our hand over our hearts and we look at the American flag and we all recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, every morning. And I still remember it to this day. And none of us really thought it was weird. Looking at things now, that's very weird, isn't it?
I'm not saying this to be edgy. When you describe this practice to people from other democracies, their jaws hit the floor. They associate it with the kind of thing that you would see authoritarian regimes do, not in a country that calls itself the leader of the free world. Because think about what the pledge actually is. It is a feudal fealty oath. It is a declaration of personal loyalty to a state.
Yeah, and I think the most disturbing part is that we make children do it. Children, children who don't understand what they're even pledging. We make children do this.
Now, I understand why elected officials and military personnel swear oaths of service. That makes sense. They're accepting a position of public responsibility. But requiring a 6-year-old to pledge allegiance to a flag before they can even spell allegiance? It's brainwashing. Like, you realize the founding fathers would be horrified by this, right?
I never really thought of it that way. Wow. Yeah, but I agree. Wow. These are the types of conversations that we just don't really have in the United States. I'm gonna be honest. But it's shocking how many things like should be addressed that we just don't even think about.
These were men who literally threw off the yoke of another red, white, and blue flag when it represented tyranny. They understood and wrote extensively about the fact that it is the duty of every free person to question authority and resist tyranny, not just pledge blind loyalty to a piece of cloth. The entire American experiment was built on the idea that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, and that when a government fails its people, those people have the right and the obligation to challenge it.
I think that's what America stood for when it was created. I agree. Like we fought for the way America was founded. The US, we fought for our independence and broke free and became a very successful nation and questioned how we were governed and I think like enough time has passed where we've just kind of forgotten like those philosophies that our country was founded on.
This is the entire reasoning behind the Second Amendment. Creating mindless, loyal zombies out of children is the exact opposite of what the founders fought for, and yet suggests that we stop doing this in our children's schools and watch how fast you get called un-American. Number 6, the myth that America was founded as a Christian nation. If you've ever driven through the American South, or honestly, large parts of the Midwest and rural America, you've probably seen billboards saying things like, hell is real, abortion is murder, and Jesus saves.
These are real, and you see them everywhere. Yeah, absolutely.
They line the highways like wallpaper, so pervasive that most people stop noticing them. Religious messaging in America is so saturated into the culture that it becomes invisible, which is exactly what makes it so effective. But here's what a lot of Americans don't know.
I mean, I've always thought those were pretty stupid. Like I do notice them. And to this day, and I like laugh to my like and think, oh, that's so stupid. Like that's ridiculous. So I don't think this particular form of brainwashing has worked on me. I do acknowledge how insane and stupid that looks.
The United States was never a Christian nation. The founders were explicit about this. The Constitution makes zero mention of Christianity or Jesus. The First Amendment enshrines the separation of church and state. The Treaty of Tripoli, unanimously ratified by the Senate in 1797 and signed by President John Adams, states in very plain language that the government of the United States is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion.
I don't really relate to that stuff very much, but for a lot of Americans, this would be heresy. This would be unthinkable to say. A lot of Americans identify the United States as a Christian nation. Uh, so, yeah, this applies to a lot of the population of the US.
That is not my interpretation. That is a legally binding document from the founding generation. So, where did the Christian nation myth come from? Well, in keeping with the rest of this video, propaganda. Cold War propaganda to be specific. Under God was added to the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954. In God We Trust was added to the
Huh.
paper currency in 1957.
That recently, huh? Cause yeah, I've noticed that our money has under God a lot of our national, like the Pledge of Allegiance that we say has references God. So it makes sense why a lot of Americans identify Christianity with the U.S.
And adopted as the national motto the year before. Our original motto, E Pluribus Unum, is more about plurality. Out of many, one. Both of
Huh.
these actions were deliberate moves to contrast the United States against godless communism. They weren't ancient traditions passed down by the founders. They're
I see.
marketing decisions which were made by politicians in the 1950s. And now, barely 70 years later, millions of Americans will swear on a stack of Bibles that this country was founded as a Christian nation.
Absolutely. I did not know that. That's insane. Wow.
And that anyone who says otherwise is attacking their heritage. The conflation of patriotism with Christianity is itself a product of propaganda, and it's one of the most dangerous because it means that questioning religion in America isn't just seen as blasphemy, it's treason. Number 7. American exceptionalism. This one is huge, the one that ties all the rest of it together.
American exceptionalism. This I think is the idea that America is the greatest, which I think is one of the biggest core value that we are taught as little children growing up in the US. We are taught that we are the best country. So this I'm interested about this because this is like perhaps the most true one.
American exceptionalism isn't just this belief that America is different, it's a belief that America is inherently superior, better, divinely favored, the greatest country that God ever put on this earth. And it functions not just as a belief, but as a social enforcement mechanism. Because in America, criticism of the country is treated as betrayal. Point out that other nations have better healthcare outcomes, and you're told, well, why don't you just move there? So
Yeah. Yeah, we have a big problem with criticism. That alone explains a lot of this, frankly. Explains a lot of the troubles we have. We have so much trouble with criticism, with admitting that there are things we don't do well and that there are things we don't know and things that we do wrong. That would be the first step in changing a lot of these things. But the first step is admitting this stuff is true, which I don't think we're really willing to do.
suggest that the military budget is bloated, and it is bloated, and suddenly you hate our troops. If you point out that Americans rank poorly on education, press freedom, or infant mortality compared to other developed countries, and you're suddenly ungrateful. Even liberals and progressives who critique America specifically because they want to improve it get branded as unpatriotic. Do you see how backwards that is? The
Yeah.
messaging
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's like if you're criticizing the US, especially if you're being constructive, if you're suggesting ways we could be better, that is a good thing. That should be welcome. That's how anybody improves. Instead, we get very defensive and angry, and it's very true.
is clear. You can love America or you can criticize it. You can't do both. But in most healthy democracies, critique is understood as a form of patriotism. Wanting your country to live up to its own ideals isn't betrayal. It is the highest form of civic engagement. The pressure to never question America,
Yeah.
to treat any criticism as an attack, to reflexively defend the status quo no matter how messed up it is because admitting a problem feels like admitting defeat, that social pressure is itself one of the most effective forms of propaganda there is. Because it doesn't require a government agency or state-run media outlets, it's enforced by your neighbors and your coworkers, your family, and your own internalized guilt.
Jeez. Oh my God. This is crazy. Like, I feel like every American should watch this. Seriously. It's very good. It's very eye-opening. And It's difficult in many ways. I feel like I'm pretty open-minded about a lot of things, so I'm trying to like take this in and be open-minded about it. I think that a lot of Americans would not like to hear this. Would not like this at all.
Like I said at the beginning, I don't hate America. I want it to be better. And if that makes me un-American in your eyes, then, well, I think I kind of proved my point. It is the civic duty of every citizen to question what we've been taught, to explore outside the bubble, whether that's through reading, traveling, or learning other languages, using LingoPie, of course, and exposing ourselves to the perspectives that challenge our own assumptions.
Yeah, we really aren't taught to have an interest in that stuff. We're not taught to have an interest in other cultures or countries or other ways of doing things. Because why would we do, why? Because the US does everything perfect already. There's no need to learn a different way. It's insane.
It's our duty to push back against propaganda and to exercise the very First Amendment rights that we claim to value. Because things don't have to be like this. They can be better. But we have to first recognize the propaganda and be honest with ourselves in order to get there. If you
Yeah.
guys enjoy
Yeah. Exactly. You have to be honest. I don't know if any. I have a hard time believing that things are going to change much here in the US. There are those of us that are open-minded, but the propaganda, the brainwashing, the brain dead mentality is strong. And there's a lot of people who don't care. Donald Trump became our president, for God's sake. That's like a big signal, perhaps, that the United States is having a lot of problems, including all of this stuff. But it should also be, I think it's been eye-opening for a lot of Americans too, who are like, wait, we're supposed to be the greatest, but everything sucks right now, and everyone hates us. So that's at least like kind of a wake-up call. But I don't know if it's enough. I don't. But yeah, we have to be honest with ourselves and admit a lot of things that we don't want to admit, like that we are brainwashed in many ways as kids, and that we need to be self-analytical more. And it's tough, but so important. So this was great. I'm so glad I took a look at this. It's hard to look at yourself and look at your own country objectively, and sort of hearing about it from an outside perspective is a great way to do that. So this was great. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts, especially if you're outside the US, your thoughts on if Americans are brainwashed or what you think about all this. That'd be very interesting to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.